You're listening to the Choose Your Chaos podcast with myself, Nathan Hayes. On this show, we try to explore and simplify the practices coming to the fore in mental health, health and fitness, productivity, spirituality, and body optimization. Together with experts, leaders, and explorers, we try to explore exactly how different practices are connecting and harmonizing, how you can adopt them, and where all of this is going, as a collective and as individuals. Today's podcast is with Wayne Mcgrath. Wayne is a personal trainer who focuses on longevity, functional fitness, and range of motion movements. He has been doing this for the past number of years, and his knowledge of the body is immense. But what I know Wayne for is how we met. You see, there are many lessons that everyone needs to learn, and then there are those which might be more individual to each person. I wholeheartedly believe gratitude belongs to the former. And especially in today's world of drive and ambition, gratitude is the tonic that allows us to stop, rest, and appreciate what is. There is no perfect point. It is a pendulum. And Wayne really widened my range, no pun intended, so that by really giving gratitude space and allowing the swing between gratitude and ambition, I have a felt sense of being closer to that beautiful paradox of being relaxed and intense. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Wayne Mcgrath to the show. Hello, Wayne.
That's gas.
How are you keeping today?
Yeah, super today. Yeah, well rested after the holiday anyway.
Well, that holiday, I'll definitely have to dig into that. But you are over in Africa?
I was, yeah.
I haven't talked to you since, but the pictures looked amazing of you just jumping into the river, was it, with all the kids and stuff?
Yeah. This is the sea, the Indian Ocean.
It looked beautiful. And I'm after saying it in the introduction as well, but I think that brought up, you were on about gratitude that time as well, that the people there were just happy, grateful at all times. Like that's magic, man.
And it's simple life, hard life. They live their life day to day, but they're peaceful with it. They're content with it, you know.
Yeah, like that's amazing.
It's the way.
Before I jump into just all that kind of the talking that I know that we're going to like.
That's just gonna flow.
I cannot wait. But I do want to like introduce people to you yourself, and I want to bring it in with a certain perspective on it. So this show kind of is looking for the through line. It's recognizing that all these different practices pull you in different directions, and that what we're trying to do is like we are the through line between all of those practices, and these kind of peel back those kind of fuddling layers, those kind of like little bits of disturbing or distracting patterns that kind of get layered on top. So with that, I want to, because when we spoke first, you were on about the fact that aggression was kind of a thing for you that you'd kind of work through. And I think that's very common for guys. I do find myself, actually, I tended on the opposite end of that spectrum, and I'm trying to be more assertive. So I'm really curious, if just to give a little bit of background for yourself, but how that manifested as you were coming older, but how you found, because you're quite sensitive now to this kind of spiritual way, as in like I know you're in the city and you're teaching all these people how to be functional and be optimal and be this like very formidable character. You're teaching that, but in talking to you, you're very sensitive to the other person. So you've a beautiful balance, and I'd love just to
we strive for it, but I wouldn't call it a beautiful balance anyway. But it's awareness. Awareness is the key, you know. And then the key is only a tool, and then you need the application to have the true mastery of any practice, you know, and find yourself the balance. But for me now, it's just aware of everything, you know.
Well, I do find you, as I said, very receptive or sensitive to the room and to other people. So can you just like tell me what were you like as like teenage sort of years? Because they're quite formidable, yeah. And where you started from, what were the kind of keys or clicks that got you to kind of be more receptive or be kind of open in that way?
Well, where do I go with this? I suppose like we just go straight to the point with that, like what you said there about aggression, yeah. And for me, from all the work I've done now, like going deep into myself, inner work, the shadow work, the deepest of rip back layers and layers and layers of myself. Aggression for me was, believe it or not, it was a protective mechanism.
Yeah.
So I would put on a coat of armor or a real hard exterior and hit people head on, you know, as a way of just protecting myself, because underneath that was just really the real me, which is what you were talking about there now, which is was starting to come to more to fruition since I started to be more aware of who I really am. And that real me was more, it was just coming from a place of, I suppose, being vulnerable, scared, everything. So when you're in them positions, you have the flight where you retreat into yourself and you become like what you could say, maybe a victim to your circumstances or your environment, or you can fight it and meet it head on, or you can be balanced and be grounded and just let it brush over your head, which is very hard to do. So for me, it was just, I was fight.
Yeah.
And it was coming from a place of yeah.
Well, I do find even there you're on about like finding a balance. Can I ask you just to talk about that? Because I personally find that balance is has tripped me up. Trying to find a middle ground that I can just arrive in and just be like, ta-da, I got it, done, has been a trip hazard for me. And I found actually that a pendulum swing or like a range of motion is more freeing, so that I still allow for that intense kind of aggression, and then I still allow for that intense susceptibility or kind of sensitivity to what's going on. And the more I've tried to find a balance, the narrower that spectrum has been.
Yeah.
The more I allow either one in a healthy manner, the more I feel, well, healthier and more well-rounded in it. Yeah. How does that land for you, or do you find a balance in it?
So the reason you go back to what you just said there about trying to find a balance and tripping up all the time is because like true balance, that's the pure essence of life across all the practices throughout ancient history, no matter what your perspective is or what your views are, your religious beliefs. Even the atheists, they all understand that balance is a thing, yeah? And we can't get away from it. So be truly centered and truly balanced and understand the extremes of both polarities, that is like the holy grail.
Yeah.
Which is, or the philosopher's stone, or whatever you want to call it, or the enlightened one, the Buddhists, nirvana. It's extremely difficult to find.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people, when they're struggling to try and find balance, they will trip up. They will find themselves fumbling and falling, and that's okay, because that's part of the human condition. But when we're talking about balance and becoming more centered and more grounded in the Holy Grail and finding the philosopher's stone to all of ourselves, and you can't get away from one of the top universal laws that everything operates by, and that's just the principle of polarity. Everything has its polar opposites. Everything, like polarity lives in everything. On the physical plane, the mental plane, the spiritual plane, the emotional plane, on all of the energy across the universe, polarity is everywhere, and you cannot escape it.
Yeah.
And if you want to find that balance, you need to understand that polarity exists and everything has its polar opposites.
Yeah.
And this is where the pendulum swing comes in, because you're swinging from both sides. And it is a pendulum. That's exactly what it is. And it's like the thing with people, so we'll acknowledge that there is opposites in everything, right? But what people don't understand is they're not opposing each other. They're of the one thing.
Yep.
So love and hate, they're very easy for people to understand. Love on this side, hate on that side. Or darkness and light is probably another one as well. And it's like, darkness is light. Love is hate. Truth and lies, they are the same thing. The only thing that separates them is degrees of vibration. And this exists on the physical body, The mental body, the spiritual body, whatever your view is, you can't escape it. So if we have love here, true love and true hate, right? They're the same thing. They just operate on different degrees of freedom. And where the pendulum swings is where you lie. And sometimes the pendulum can swing small, sometimes it can swing big. And the pendulum is actually another law as well that you can't escape. The toys rise, the toys fall. So like if you want to try find true balance and center yourself, you need to understand these fundamental principles and how you actually are a pawn of the universal laws. But like what we always say, and you hear people saying, even when they're not into spirituality or anything, they'll always talk about rising above it. So once you bring awareness to this and you understand that it's real and you cannot escape it, then it's up to you to how you respond. And then the rising above it and then actually integrating it into your life. This is how I find my personal experience, is how I worked on getting myself more centered and balanced within me physical, within me mental, and within me spiritual, which was the final straw that broke the camel's back in my life, you know. So I went physical, mental, and spiritual. That's the way my journey went. So you can't escape the principle of polarity. And if you want to talk about balance, you have to acknowledge these things, because plonk in the center, you can't escape them. You know?
Yeah. No, I really like that. I heard a great quote from Ken Wilber's guy from Integral Theory, and he says that as you kind of zoom out and you're able to take in more, that you feel more, but you care a little bit less.
Yeah.
In a certain way, because you recognize the full spectrum. But
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of get your point on this. So you said it went from physical, mental to spiritual, and like I love the concepts you're coming with here, and that kind of those ideas. How have those concepts kind of unlocked different things in life? But then how, like, what practices do you do to kind of reconnect you to those? Like, when do you think about that in the everyday? Is this like a habit that you have when you listen to certain music in the car? Like, where do you place those thoughts in the everyday to kind of check yourself and kind of keep yourself in contact with them?
Well, we start with the physical. I do things for me body every day.
Yes.
So you can take, yeah, I nourish my body. I do movement. I do exercise. I understand life gets in people's way. I'm busy myself. I have a 4-year-old boy. I run my own business. I work for myself. I could be in the gym for 16 hours some days, but I still always squeeze in some movement, because I know, like, I've been, you lie asleep for 8 hours if you're lucky. Your body is craving movement. Energy is stored in the body. So that's the polarity of rest, is movement. And you need to find the balance between them two. So on the physical plane, all it is just acknowledging that throughout the day, my body's going to need some movement. It's going to need some nourishment, and it's going to need the energy shifted and transferred around my body.
Can I dig into that a bit? Because like obviously like the physical is your like domain, as in
Yeah.
I'm distinctly not going to ask you about like range of motion stuff and like the real gritty bits of it, because I'll get lost in that.
Yeah.
But I've done some of the exercises, and some of them are for endurance. I just did a hike there last week in Scotland. It was beautiful, and I was doing those ones for your where you're doing like a lunge, is it? And your tense muscles. It was really good. So I've done that, and I've tried, actually, there was ones there where you're crossing your legs and you're dipping down and you're trying to like rotate your hip while you're doing it. And so you have a broad spectrum of exercises, and I do find that they tap into different parts, where sometimes it's pure primal, like, you know, deadlift, you just rip the bar off the ground. And then these other ones, it's this endurance, and you're just like monk mode. I can endure this. I will spiritually like transcend my physical body. And then there's other ones where it's graceful. Yeah, it's almost like a dance or elegant to it or something like that, and you're really mindful of the like the movement of it. So I love those like different parts. And do you like, is that on purpose? Is that mental as well as physical? Like, I recognize endurance and range of motion are two different things, but like the actual mentality that you use in the exercises you do with clients, it's you really emphasize that.
Yeah, because you have to, like, when you start to get it, like it's you get into this game right in the beginning, and it's you know a lot of it's very aesthetically driven. It's very ego driven. dumbbell goes up, dumbbell goes down, you know. But then as throughout my actual personal story, I started to realize there's so much more. And if you just even go to the simple stuff like the 5 pillars of health and fitness, you'll have like strength, endurance, balance, coordination, do you know what I mean? Mobility, flexibility. Like that's the simple stuff. And what happens is we only have so much physical energy and so much ways our body can adapt. And if you put all your eggs in one basket, what happens is the body's very, very clever. It won't waste time on what you don't deem important anymore. Like, it's so smart. And so if you want to just push your deadlift all the time, you're going to get really, really good at the deadlift and really, really strong and drive that energy through your body, drive that physical adaptation through your body. But if you're just focusing on that, you're going to lose some of the stuff here on the other side. And then what's going to happen? Your body's out of balance.
And I think that reflects the mental as well. I think that so reflects
like we humans, we love to throw words on things: physical, mental, spiritual. Like, you know, you can't get away from it. They're all the one thing. They coexist, but we like to put labels and words and throw things on them so we can understand things and break things down and compartmentalize them and make them subjective and things. But like, it's all the one thing. Like, if you're pushing, you want to get strong at the deadlift and you're pushing it, man. When you get to the high ends of performance, the amount of mental and emotional stuff you have to pull on to get through that is absolutely insane. I work with fighters, things like that, and like the way that, like, the emotion behind some of the stuff they do is absolutely crazy. Like, and when I use the word emotion, you can really tie that more into the spiritual side, you know. And it's like, you know, words again tripping us up, but yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
Back to that. So you go back to that. If I push that one side aspect of physical adaptation that the body's able for, out of the couple of pillars I just gave you there, like, and strength, endurance, balance, coordination, flexibility, mobility. If I just keep pushing this, the brain and the body won't waste time on what you don't deem important anymore. And how it understands that is by the signals you send, by the tasks you're doing, and also the information it receives from your environment. So if you just keep pushing the one thing, you're going to lose balance on all others. And then you're completely out of balance. Yeah, you'll get really fucking good at the deadlift and really strong at doing that particular type of movement pattern. But all these other aspects out here that keep our bodies centered and balanced, that are the 5 pillars of health, they really, really are, they're going to suffer. So what I try to tie in everything for everyone at every minute and every time, and mash it all together and give it to them. But then that's my bias. So you can't have your own bias. So everything that I do has to be task specific, has to be goal specific, and it has to be individual capacity, like your current capability specific as well. So what's right for Nathan, even though we're all aiming in the one direction, might not be right for what's right for Wayne. Eventually we're going to cross over, but because we're individual, and there's back to polarity again, you have individuality and you have equality. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're individual, but everything's equal. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a program that's balanced and equal, but for the individual. And if you push one aspect, you'll lose on the others.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious on that. So I'm recognizing that your tools in this space are very grounded, are very practical, are very just like I float off on ideas, and sometimes then that doesn't actually ground me down. And then, so this is kind of why I'm doing these interviews, is trying like find the actual real world practices of how I can connect these ideas to something that I can integrate and I can make a habit, so that the integration doesn't have to be conscious all the time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm recognizing this. So I'm going to kind of like set one up for you because I think it's an easy hit. But like flexibility, I do find makes me reflect on kind of like flexibility in life, as in just that how and range of motion as well. Like, you know, how kind of free am I in this body? How able am I? How restricted am I? How tense am I? Like, that flexibility really kind of like works on that mental aspect directly as you're working on the physical.
Mm-hmm.
The one I'd love to dig into with you is the primal versus the sensitivity. So in my head, when I do the workout, I have those moments where I rip the bar and it is just, I'm asserting my energy, I'm asserting my will to force this bar up or off me or whatever the exercise is. And then I'm also doing some form of mindfulness where I'm doing like a pull down or something like that. And I'm aware of every muscle on the way down and on the release. And I'm much more receptive and sensitive to what's going on in the body. And I find those two very good. Now, in my, like, because what I really want to know here is how these generalize across domains. Because I think it's beautiful to get like, if you're into yoga and you're kind of moving energy and all the rest, it's like, that's great. But you want to recognize it in your conversation style where I'm pushing and pulling in the conversation with a bit more fluidity and that style of thing. So I'd love to know, what exercises do you use for the primal and what do you use for the more mindful? And then how do you, is there anything, like if you're finding yourself being a bit too primal, a bit too assertive, a bit too kind of like, let's just get stuff done, come on, especially with a kid and stuff like that, that doesn't always work. And then
Definitely not with a kid.
yeah, and then other times we can be like, I can be too receptive and not assertive enough and not declare my boundaries or not declare or not offer an energy to a group, like making jokes and stuff like that. I can find myself missing that primal. So just on that side of things, how do you find it transfers? And is there anything that, like, if you're finding yourself a little bit, that you have like a first aid patch where you're
you
like,
want my personal view on it, or
yes,
your my individual view on it? Yeah. So it's like we because it's going to be different for everyone. So it's very hard for me to give particular exercises because somebody might find a particular exercise sensitive and more flowy, and someone might find it more primal and more. So it's very hard. But from my perspective, it's like, best way of putting this is, it's like our body, like what training truly is it's exposure to problem solving and it's exposure to stress. Even the movement, flowy stuff, the yogi, the stretching, it's still your body's being pushed outside of its comfort zone. And, flexibility, particularly, you're being pushed to an end range of motion, and the joint and the structure is not comfortable. The nervous system's not comfortable, particularly when it hasn't been there before. It'll want to hold on, and you need to breathe and convince it and spend some time in the position and things like that for the nervous system to let go. So it's all stress, right, for the body. And all you're trying to do is your specific adaptation to impose demands. The body will get good at whatever stresses and demands you put on it. If you find your current capability and your current capacity levels, train underneath that, and over time it will get better. So for me, all I'm thinking is it's back to the principle of polarity, right? I want to be dead center. But for me to be able to call upon the primal, I need to expose my body and my nervous system to that. So if I'm dead center here and I've never exposed my body to that, I'm not going to be able to call upon that. And if I'm out here then doing the yogi and the more flowy and energy moving and the more sensitive stuff, if I'm center again, I've never exposed my body to that. I'll never be able to call upon that. So therefore I'm out of balance. Now, if I'm here all the time just pushing the primal, you're going to feel shit. And then what's going to happen is the psyche, the spirit, or whatever you want to call it, or even the physical self will do it. We'll just put words on it for now. And that will draw situations of your life to help you become more balanced and grounded. So let's say I'm pushing the primal all the time, whatever that is to the individual, right? And I'm never doing any of the flowy, sensitive stuff out here. And I'm stuck here. So it's always with balance. It's always too far one side or the other kind of thing, right? So I'm too far one side here and I'm not getting any exposure to this. My life will try and balance me out. So it could be sitting there, this big, strong, tough guy who's pushing all the primal stuff, and I'm crying at a movie. Because the psyche will always want to find the balance somewhere. So with me, within the physical training, I like to expose myself to as many different stressors as I can, allow my body to gain exposure to them, so then I can call upon them when I need them from a more balanced state. So there's days for going into the gym punching the bag and ripping a bar off the ground. And there's days for going into the gym and just lying down and rolling around and crawling around on the ground and just relaxing. There's days for breathing. There's days for flexing. There's days for everything. And again, if we go back to the 5 pillars, I'm just trying to expose myself to everything so my body is more balanced and grounded. But this is the mistake a lot of people make with programming. They don't fully even, like, if I even asked the 10 personal trainers, I guarantee two of them will be able to name them 5 pillars. Like, do you know what I mean? And it's like,
100%. You are an anomaly online, to be honest. As in, like, watching your like Instagram and stuff like that, I heavily advise anyone that's watching this to actually go check it out. But it doesn't stay in one place for very long. One time you literally are like this, like squatting down and walking along the floor, like getting these like hip movement or rotation there. And then other times it's these like slow movements where it's more mindful and all the rest. So I do find that interesting. I think you have like so many tools available to you. So actually that's a question.
We all have these tools. In this game, and the people I've learned off, I am a student. Well, we're forever students, but I'm like a pup. I'm like a little puppy or a little cub. And there's lads and ladies out there who are absolute monsters. And when I mean monsters in a good way, they're like super smart. They know so much about all this. Like I'm a cub, I'm a puppy compared to all that. Like, but these tools are there for everyone.
Okay, can I ask, out of all the tools that you have so far, using that polarity of the primal and the more sensitive, what would be the one that you would keep if you had to get rid of all the rest? What would be the one? Is like, I'm having an off day or whatever it is, and for the next week, I only have access to one single primal energy, and I only have access to one single sensitivity sort of energy. So what would be your 2 things?
What do you mean in that sense? Like exercise wise, or?
Honestly, actually, if you wanted to bring that outside of exercise, I'd be very willing to. But but I'm just curious, like, where would you go to if you had to get rid of all else for, say, a week, and you could only have one source of access to that assertive, dominant energy, and then access to one thing for that receptive, nurturing sort of energy? Where would you go to for each one?
Well, obviously, you're gonna go nature and solitude, aren't you, for the sensitive, nurturing side of things? So, like, I've done it maybe, our good friend Darryl as well. He does a good bit of it where he spends a bit of time alone in nature, and I've learned that practice from him, and I've gone out and done it. So, if I was to look for the more sensitive side of things, solitude and nature, that's where I'd be. And then if you were looking to push the more primal thing, I just love going into the gym and just throwing heavy things around, even though I'm not the strongest guy there by any means. But everything's relative anyway. But that, I just love going in, lifting a few fucking heavyweights, just fucking roaring and shouting and pushing my body to the extreme. And I suppose that's what I do. I just lift a lot of heavy weights, or I'd spend a lot of time in nature by myself. So
beautiful. I love that you brought in nature, because I do like this show is actually kind of quite derivative of John Vervaeke, and he has this ecology of practices where you have a singular practice and a collective practice. You've a creative practice where the energy comes just from you, and then an eclectic practice, which is like you're submitting to tradition, you're submitting to some sort of form. You've a sitting and a moving practice, you've this sort of stuff. But
and that's just all polarity. Sitting,
exactly.
You can't escape it.
But even he himself says, as in, like, without nature is this grand holder where you can't really avoid that one, to be honest.
No, because humans nowadays, they think that we're separate from it. They try to separate themselves from their biology and their environment and where we came from and what life is all about. And the more you try and separate yourself from that, and I've spoke to some very intelligent people on this, is the more unhealthy you become. The more you try and separate yourself from what you truly are and where you come from and the biology and your environment and everything, the more you separate, the more unhealthy you become. The more you come back to nature, because we are nature, we're not separate from our biology, you can't get away from it. The more we come back to it, the more grounded and the more even you can even just say the more healthier you can become within yourself. You know.
Okay, I have this is an odd actual quote that I'm going to use here. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So this is from I I believe it was Daniel Schmackenberg, I believe, one of these high-flying thinkers, but he was on about in a kind of cultural sense, in an evolutionary sense, if you go back and take the last 2,000 years or something like that, you have the axial, okay, I won't get too convoluted. You had a spiritual revolution where you had a lot of these kind of religions coming up, and these allowed us to get past the small tribes and into bigger kind of cities, allowed us to trust each other even though we didn't know each other personally. But then that ran into the problem of these cultures, these communities or stories kind of clashing and us fighting over that. So over the last, say 300 to 400 years, we have put, as a culture, we have put the marketplace first, and we have put this equality sort of first. And that worked great, because now like everyone, all shapes and colors and everything else were allowed in under this umbrella of the market, and it was all equal.
Yeah, but what's the polarity to equal then?
But okay, the thing here is that the kids growing up in that civilization mistook this for genuine value, if that makes sense. So we did that as an adaptive thing to make sure
we lost our individuality then as well a lot of the times.
But we lost our connection with meaning, with nature, as you were saying there. We thought that then the purpose of life was this market thing because we put it first. And we only put it first for a practical reason. We put it first so that we could all get along, that we had this umbrella that we could all agree to, and then we allowed all the different stories. But then we lost value for the stories, for why we're here and our purpose and our sense of meaning and our quest. So to bring this back to yourself, I wanted to bring that in because you were on about the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And I do find that that's what we did. We flipped it upside down, where we put the physical first. And then we said the mental, as long as it serves the physical, and the spiritual, if you're really out there, only if it serves your mental. And really, it's meant to be the way you phrased it, where the physical, mental, spiritual is the quest for self-realization, for finding ourselves, for doing that. So in that, like, kind of cultural sense, wider sense, I know I'm getting away from the individual here, but
But that's it. You zoom in, you zoom out. That's the way it is. We're everything at one moment and nothing at another moment. So what you're doing is fine there.
Perfect. I'd just love to know. So clearly you have a good sense of that, where you put the spiritual on top. And yes, you have to be grounded and earthed. I think you have a really good balance, as I said at the start. How do you see that leaking into your space more, into that personal training, where the physical is now becoming in service of the spiritual? It's no longer like, yes, everyone starts for egoic reasons. I start because I want to look good for the girls. But eventually it becomes this semi-religion, semi-ritual, for my mental health. And then it almost becomes spiritual. Do you find that kind of leaking in?
Some people, yeah, some people no. And that's just because people are just so much dealing with just, they're like the gym is nothing compared to what's going on in their life. Like realistically, like they're coming in for maybe 1, 2 hours, 3 hours max a week. Like in the grand scheme of things of what's going on in the world, the gym is a very small part of people's lives, you know. So some people, yeah, they come in and it's they get a big opening of realization of life and who they are, and it can be a big expansive thing like it was for me. But other people, they just don't give a shit. Like they're just coming in. It's an hour they have, and they've so much stuff going on in their lives. They've so much stuff they're carrying from throughout their lives, baggage and things like that, that they're just happy to just even be there for an hour and just talk and have an hour to themselves. And if I even mentioned one word of spirituality, I'd be sacked. And yep. to these certain people, and that's okay, because you have to respect where everyone is in their current journey, where they're coming from, and maybe in your mind, maybe get a little idea of where they might be going. And then you'll get other people that will come in and they'll start off, and then all of a sudden you'll see them. They started with you, and then 2 years later they're going to ayahuasca retreats in South America. You're going to have the polarity of everything. But yeah, you do see a lot of people. What they will start with is the physical.
Yeah.
And what happens with the physical then is, right, this is quite interesting, is when the physical starts. And I literally just had this conversation with a guy I just trained literally before I jumped on this. Right, is when the physical, because he was talking about the carryover of training into his life. So when the physical,
Beautiful.
when it starts to feel good, when your body, without looking good, right? Forget about the aesthetics, because we put views on what's aesthetically good and what's not, which is all false. But anyway, when the body starts to feel good, what starts to happen is, right, the body starts to vibrate on an energetic field on a higher vibration. So the mental construct then starts to realize this. And it goes, oh, hold on a minute here. So the mental will kick in then. Because sometimes people can lose their spirit and lose their souls, and their souls can be off somewhere else floating throughout the ether, you know? So you have your physical and your mental in this moment, right? And so the physical starts, because it's physical. We're living on the physical plane. I'm physically moving. I'm physically feeling better. The body itself as an energetic thing starts to vibrate on a higher frequency. The mental catches on then, and it realizes, oh, and then you'll start noticing physical changes in yourself. You might lose a little bit of weight. Your arms might start getting a bit bigger. Your girlfriend might say your back muscles are getting bigger, and it could be, or your boyfriend might say your legs look great to his girlfriend, or whatever it may be, right? And then the mental construct starts to understand this and realize this. And it wants to start making positive change. It wants to start vibrating. The psyche always wants to get back to a more grounded, balanced state. So it starts wanting to change things around, and then it starts to realize it's more able, because what happens is the mind, when you start pushing the body then, so you get somebody feeling good, and then you might start pushing some boundaries with them, then it's actually the mind that comes into play then. The mind will actually shut down before the body will. And when you start to actually convince the mind of what it is capable of and how strong it actually is, it starts to vibrate on a higher frequency then.
Yeah.
And then if someone's really into all this and they just love it, then the spirit will start coming in. This is the way I see it, and this is what happened to me.
Well, the minute that they are starting to aspire to something higher than themselves, I would say that's the footnotes of spirituality right there.
Yeah.
So I do think just watching your stuff, I do think because you pull in so many different directions, because I've seen personal trainers and it's like you're going in for the physique and it's diet and it's like do these exercises, or you're going in for strength and it's a bit mental and it's just primal. You are just, okay, let's get you functional. Let's get your body in a way that it's in such a good relationship with the world. And it's such a good language that you have, because it brings in the flexibility, the range of motion, it brings in longevity, it brings in, like, you know, how are you going to be when you're 40? Yes, you want to lift something heavy now, but like we're building a body here that is something to be respected. And I do think just naturally, I think you're smuggling in spirituality basically. Because
and that's probably, do you know what? That's happening energetically, unconsciously. I am not doing that. That's just the energy that's in me now, and it's been pushed out. And what'll happen is you'll get people like yourself who are recipient to it, and it becomes a reciprocal relationship, hence why we're even on the call now. And then you get other people who probably followed me for all the other stuff, and the minute they feel that, they'll get met with resistance, and it'll be unfollow. My follow chart on Instagram is insane. For every 10 I get, I lose 10. And it's constantly like this. I can't seem to find a balance with that at all. I can't get, actually, it probably is balanced because I want to grow it, and it's actually just staying in the middle. So what happens is that's probably just happening on an energetic field, where because I'm more open and aware to it, it's just being pushed out unconsciously through the language I'm using, through my thoughts, through the way I'm expressing things, through the way maybe even the way I look to certain people. Do you know what I mean? I think it's sneaking in itself unconsciously, you know? It's an energetic thing. Like.
Yeah. Even the way you were saying there about, like, you know, when you're doing flexibility, that you have to sit in that pose and allow your body to recognize that it is safe there. As in, if that isn't a spiritual exercise, to say, hey, what would it be like if you were a bit more, if you were a bit more softer, a bit more humble, or if you were a bit more assertive? Like, what would it feel like? And you're getting access to those poles. So I just think,
and that's the beauty. That is the beauty, because the nervous system, right, underneath it all, like we've got many systems that function underneath the body, and they're all interconnected, and they all work in harmony with one another. And You'll get people that are saying this system is this and this and this. But within the actual physical body, you'll have 7, 8, some people say 6, 5. You have all the different systems, right? But the nervous system is the one, it's like the top, like from a hierarchy standpoint. Yes, you'll have the nerve, and the nervous system controls everything in the body, right? Voluntary and involuntary reactions and everything. The nervous system, it's literally your brain down into your spinal cord. That'll be your central nervous system, and then you have your peripheral nervous system. That's literally like branches of a tree that run throughout your whole body, and it works on electric magnetic currents. So you can't get away from us being an energetic being anyway, because we're literally operating on negative and positive charges that go throughout the whole body that create my arm doing this and me moving to talk words to you. So it's like the nervous system rules the roost, and all you're trying to do all the time is the nervous system, all it cares about is safety. It's like an overprotective mother. And it won't let you go like your ma won't let you go to the cinema with your mates if she doesn't know you're able to look after yourself or if it's safe. And the nervous system's the same. It won't let you into a certain particular range of motion, or it won't let you open up your body to a certain particular thing because it doesn't deem it safe. You haven't convinced it enough quite yet, or it doesn't deem you responsible enough to get into that position. And that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to spend some time maybe in a pose, in a position, and again, like what I said back earlier, gain exposure to that. So then the nervous system knows it's safe. And then the nervous system actually holds on to it. And then it goes into our like into the software or the hardware, whichever right word, I think it might be the software. It goes into the software, and we're able to call upon that again when we need. And it's the same, and it won't let me lift the bar off the ground. If I don't have the strength and the capacity to do that, the nervous system won't let me. But through continuous repetition over time, I'll be able to lift that weight, because I've exposed myself to the stress. And it's actually the nervous system is the one that goes, oh yeah, hold on a minute, let's fire things up and let's get that bar off the ground, because you've done enough convincing to prove to me that this is safe and that you're responsible enough to do that. And what happens with people is people push outside them boundaries, and they suffer the consequences for it in the forms of injury and whatever it may be. And if you want to go into the mental and the spiritual, you'll get all different kinds of consequences when you push outside of your current capacity, you know?
Yeah.
So the nervous system is it's like an overprotective mother. And that's what you're trying to just prove it, that you're responsible enough and that the situation and the scenario is safe enough. And then therefore, Ma, can I go to cinema with me, mate? Yeah, she'll let you go. Nervous system, can I do the splits? Like I've showed you that, and then eventually over time let you get there, the more convincing you do. So that's what we're trying to do with our bodies all the time, is we're trying to just build a better relationship with the nervous system.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I love that, because I use the sympathetic and parasympathetic, the fight or flight and the rest and digest as that opponent processing, and I use that as a means of explaining how finding that middle balance is impossible, because we work on a system of when to push, when to relax, and like that's us. It is like
all it is about, it's just about gaining exposure to these things. So in movement and in rehab and even in training, like they have a thing, these two principles, right? And one's called progressive overload, or from a rehab standpoint, they call it graded exposure.
They do that in psychology as well, by the way, for phobias. They do that in psychology for phobias.
Yeah.
It's gradual exposure.
Yeah. So let's move away from the progressive overload and jump into the graded exposure. The body is so adaptable, resilient, and robust when you put it in the right environment to create the adaptation and allow that innate strength come to the forefront. But if you fuck the body in too quick, too soon into any scenario, it's going to actually bend and break and give pain as a form of protecting itself. Not as a way of wanting to punish it or anything like that. It's doing it to protect itself. But if you gradually expose, no matter what it is in this world, I'm convinced of this, no matter what it is, if you gradually expose the body to it over time, it will adapt and get stronger, no matter what it is, physical, mental, spiritual, phobias, ice baths, cold water, hot water. Obviously, there is thresholds to things, but at the end of the day, you like, there are no freaks. There's nobody more special than anyone else. They're just people who have more exposure than someone else.
That's a very Jungian sort of idea there, the hero's journey of overcoming the difficulty. But I'm going to be mindful of the time here, and I'm going to just finish off with 3 questions that that I tend to finish these off with. So, Wayne, I haven't actually got onto like symbolism with you. I didn't touch on it today, but you're one of these like little sages on my shoulder where you tell me to be grateful, as in like, yes, you're pushing and you're going and you're doing all the rest. It's like, but have you sat down and have you said thanks for the things you got today? Because at the end of the day, you still need to sleep and you still need to rest. And gratitude has really been a thing. And honestly, you got it to stick quite hard when we met
And it's
first.
like,
So
that came at the right time for you, you know what I mean?
exactly. So you are on my council of sages. When I think of this, when I think of like, what's going wrong with my life, I'm just kind of like, oh man, what would someone else say? And I'll have a few people that I kind of tend to use. So I'm going to ask you, who would make your council of sages? And I want you to think of this in kind of 3 levels. I want you to think, 1, of the more personal relationships, people that you know personally. Number 2, perhaps some more public sort of figures. Dave Goggins, I think, is a funny one. And then 3 is more ancient or traditional or spiritual or godly sort of figures. So on those 3 levels, like if you can give me like 2 figures from each of those.
2 figures. So you want 6 people.
2 or 3, or just whoever kind of comes up for you, but who would make your council of sages?
Jesus, like on a personal aspect, there's not really, there's like where I currently am right now in my life, I kind of look at people and their energy and what the reciprocal relationship is between me and them is like, they're like tools in a toolbox. Like, so if I want me dad's advice, me dad's energy, I'm so aware of what he brings to the table, I'll pull on that when I need it. So I'll go to him for advice. Or if I want someone that's sensitive and I want to listen to somebody tell me something really, really worthwhile and something I really need to hear, I'll go to me partner, my girlfriend, and I'll pull on her energy. It's like, so with personal stuff like that, with people, I just kind of use people who I look at their values. I like their values. I like what they like. Like for instance, if I need to hear something that probably no one else, I might call up Daryl and I'll sit and listen to Daryl, and Daryl might put a few things in perspective for me, But with his lens, like me and him are polar opposites. Do you know what I mean? Complete opposites of each other. So with people who I have exposure to and I understand their energies and things like that, I just look at them as like tools in a toolbox. without being rude or disrespectful. I'm saying this in the most respectful way ever. I'll pull on them energies when I kind of need them. So with personally, I wouldn't really grab 2 people as sages, I kind of just look at maybe a council of people around me and kind of use their energies when I feel like I need them. And I'm only doing this kind of like really recently, since I've become so self-aware of myself and energies and what other people kind of bring to myself, and the reciprocal relationship between us. So personally, let's say if we were to look at polarities, I'd probably pick me father on one end and me partner on the other. But he's gonna bring the and she's gonna bring the So personally,
I don't mean to trip you up there on like the polarities. It's just people who are sages. So the emphasis is on the kind of sage advice giving aspect, the access to their lens, as you said, that you have, that their lens is really important to how you move through the world, because it just opens it up differently. And I do find Daryl is beautiful for this.
Yeah,
that
I'd probably
talk to me, and his lens is just so fascinating. You're just like, oh, ritual is so important. God damn it, man.
Yeah, I'd probably pull Daryl, right? Look at it from that perspective without me probably running off on one there. Yeah, probably pull Daryl in, and a guy who I've been recently introduced. And even though I haven't spent a lot of time with him, we've had conversations back and forward, and I've been in a lot of rooms and circles with him. Would probably be Peter Kelly.
Okay.
From Subconsciously Conscious. Great guy. He's on Instagram. You can go follow him. Things like that. So probably himself and Daryl, if I was looking to really just go, right, you're standing here and I just want your perspective and advice. Yeah, I'd probably pull Daryl and himself, Peter, yeah. Even though I'm only recently in around Peter's field and energy and tribe and things like that, just his lens and his perspective on the world is just phenomenal, you know. And we both know what Daryl can bring to the table.
And then is there anyone that jumps out like on a public stage, or I suppose Peter Kelly might be one, but is there any others that would kind of jump out?
Yeah, I actually, it's funny that you mentioned it, but I actually really, really like the Goggins mentality.
He's an interesting, as in, like, if I had to live his life, it would break me.
I've read his book, like,
to have him screaming on my shoulder of like, you
Yeah.
know, there's no music in life, you just got to do it, like, just like, bloody hell if he's not like assertive as hell.
Yeah, I like Goggins, believe it or not. I actually read his book, and me and my friend, actually Rory as well, we'd be always talking about, like, you know, it's great to pull on Goggins when you need him, isn't it? Like, when because we get involved in training and things like that. So yeah, probably Goggins. And then maybe another one I recently got exposed to and done a lot of listen to his stuff on YouTube as well, is probably Joseph Campbell. If I could spend one day with anyone, let's forget about these questions. Let's just say one day with anyone, I'd pick Joseph Campbell. I'd love that man. Just knew something that no one else knew, and he tried his best to just get it across to humanity. But yeah, Joseph Campbell would be a big one for me. Like.
Okay, that is massive, because actually, like, his emphasis on story and character and all the rest is exactly what I'm trying to tap into with this question in particular. Is just, what characters do you use to pull your character apart so you get more access to your personal character? So I love that. Joseph Campbell is such a good one. I love that.
Yeah, and I actually, believe it or not, I actually do like the Goggins style of things. I really do. Like, sometimes in this life, the polarity of things, you need to just be hard. You need to just shut the fuck up and get on with your shit. You know what I mean? And sometimes at the other hand, you can have someone like Joseph trying to calm you down and tell you all about following your bliss and how beautiful the life is. So yeah, let's say we have Daryl, we have Peter, we have David Goggins, and we have Joseph Campbell. You're looking for two more, is it?
Just on the kind of tradition. Okay, so this is because we are so, like, we all kind of shudder at the idea of like this religious figure, because we're all atheists and we'd never be silly enough to believe that or to talk to these people. But the way I kind of reflect on it is that these are different aspects of this kind of infinite that we're all reaching for. I want to understand the infinite in me, and then I want that to be connected to the infinite outside of me. And I do find that whether it's your Greek gods, your Roman gods, your different prophets and different characters, they represent something in like a pure essence. You're on about the energy of people. These symbols capture like an essence that help you transcend. I find them very powerful for self-transcendence. So just, if there was anyone, if there isn't, it's totally fine, but just if there was anyone that you're just kind of like...
Yeah, I look at a lot of these prophets and figures as the same reincarnation of the same energy. Like the Buddha, he's talking the same thing Jesus Christ is talking. Like Muhammad, whatever, or Allah, or whatever it is, they're all talking about nearly the same thing. Just religion gets pulled it and scripts it and puts it into things. But when you go into the true essence of what it is, like, you'd have to look at the Buddha, really, wouldn't you? Like, it's like the one that woke up and went, hold on a minute here. I am the universe and the universe is me. And what? And heaven is here where I am now, and I need to try and find it within myself. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and that's all Jesus Christ was trying to do. He was like if you look at like what Joseph Campbell says, the symbolism behind it, he's like going around telling people, God is in you. You are God. I'm the son of God. You're the son of God. You're the daughter of God, and God is our Father, and God is everything, and God is the universe, and we need to acknowledge this, and we need to be kind to each other. We need to treat each other with respect. He's just going around teaching people proper values. So it's like, it's almost like the reincarnation of the same energy. So it was like, yeah, you'd have to pick the Buddha and Jesus, wouldn't you? Really, like, from my perspective. Look,
I love that. Actually, I love
it's
that.
like Nirvana is heaven, and then when you really look at it, what they were trying to really teach is that it's not somewhere special. We're not going to transcend to this beautiful part. Heaven and Nirvana and enlightenment, it's in us, and it's here and the here and now. That's what Joseph Campbell talks massive about as well. It's in the now, like it's right here now. You have to find it on this planet this time frame, this physical field that we're all coexisting in now. You have to find that energy here and now.
Okay, following on that, I'm going to a second question then is, so in all of this self-work, we can get quite serious. I want to be better. I want to do this. I want to do whatever else. The space for play is something that we can't do at all times in all areas, but it's really important to try and reintroduce it. And I do find that when you're exploring all of these like different little exercises, like you're exploring, you're having fun. So I'm curious, at the moment, where are you trying to find play in? What's your what's the energy you're kind of playing around with at the moment?
Like I've got a little 4-year-old boy, do you know what I mean? So my whole day could just be going around, like, let's say there's you're listening to people. Let's say I'm doing 5 PTs back to back, and each person has a specific thing they're working on and doing. And there's specific stories in your brain. You're trying to remember what they told you the last time. You're understanding stuff that's going on in their lives. You're reading their energy to dictate the situation. And I feel like I'm just in this big, huge bubble of energy. And I'm just kind of conversing. I can get so serious and so caught up in it all. And then I walk out the doors and I'm in the world again. And then I don't ground again until I see my little son. When I just look at him, it's just like, I just have to, just because he doesn't give a shit where I've been, what I've done, what I've been through, what's going on in my life. He's just like, let's go, daddy, you're here. So I just try to just bury all that to the side and go, I've done it. It's done. There's no point in dwelling on it anymore, and try and just zone in the moment and just get some of that childish, energetic energy. So I think playing with my son, and then what I try to do is I actually hate staying in the house playing. So I try and get outside as much as we can. I bring on walks. We go walk down by the river, throw stones in the river, whatever it may be. So yeah, I'd say probably finding balance within the madness of life would probably be just trying to connect with my own child through my own inner child, through my child, and probably just nature, you know.
You love it. Okay, last and final question. What advice would you give to others? And I mean this, if I can just kind of frame it, is in this relationship of trying to stretch ourselves in different ways, of trying to expose ourselves, as you said, to all these different stresses. What advice would you give for trying to find that kind of true center inside and out, that balance?
Geez, I'm not one for giving advice. I actually put a post up on Instagram there a while back saying, if you can't embody your own advice, you shouldn't be giving it to anyone else. So it's like, I could get here and pretend like I could give all the best advice in the world, but if it was to give anyone advice, like, you're here now and you've only one shot at this. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like you've only one shot at this. Like,
there's no point tiptoeing trying to keep it safe.
Yeah, or there's no point in stressing out about things. You know, you've like, you get to the essence of it, like it's like you've only, like, you know, we've only one real go at this. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, for me, see where my brain lies with all this is I can't get away from polarity. I just can't. It's where my mind has just been so zoned into. It's like there's a time and place for everything. So if I was to give advice, just, yeah, I'd say just you've one shot at it, you know what I mean? And just understand that, you know. And I think you don't even need to explain that when you fully get what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean? You've one shot at it. You're going to get caught up in the madness and the bullshit of life. You're going to get bad things happen to you, and then you're going to be on love and light again, and you're going to feel great, and life is going, and you're going to have this trade-off of the pendulum and polarity, and you can't escape it and everything. But you've only got one shot at it. So instead of being too far one side or the other, just try and understand that it's meaningless anyway, unless you're really direct with where you're going with your one shot, you know. So I'd say probably you've one shot at this.
Yeah, and we're all going to safely arrive to death.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the inevitable. And like, you can get, like, I could have thrown out millions of fucking great philosophical quotes and advice there if I wanted, but probably half shit I don't believe in. I'm just saying it because it's what I want someone to hear or whatever. But really, like, the essence of it, you have one shot at it and you can't escape feeling good, feeling bad. You're going to get it no matter what. Even if you could feel good for 10 years, you might feel bad for another 10 years. you can't escape the balance of polarity, you know.
Perfect. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, Wayne.
Yeah,
As
thank
always,
you.
or
And
once again, you are an absolute sage. And if that finishing moment didn't explain to people why you are able to stick a point and really stick it home by like kind of keeping it simple. But yes, so you only got one shot, and I think that's a beautiful note to leave it on. So thank you so
yeah,
much.
no problem, Nate. And there's so many tangents we could have gone off there. We could probably have 10 hourly conversations about every single thing thrown out there, you know. So well, yeah, thanks for giving me the time and having a chat. And I just love your mind. Your mind is like, I do be in awe of people like yourself who are really able to look at things through a completely different lens, you know. So fair play to you, and keep fighting the good fight.
Well, thank you, Wayne. And we'll yeah, it'll be exciting to see where you go. Everyone,
Yep.
if you want to check out Wayne's channel, I would highly advise it actually. You will get, no matter where you are on fitness, you will get 10 different avenues, and you will get really good advice on each one of them, and then you'll get exposure to all the others, and it's interesting. So check him out on Instagram. And is there anything else, anywhere else that they can check you out?
No, right now I'm just like anything, I'm just floating, having a bit of fun with it all, doing a bit of study in the background and things like that. So it's nothing too specific. It's just been me Instagram. It's just been Move to Freedom. So it's just move_to freedom. And I just Instagram for me now is just like a brain dump, you know.
Perfect. Okay, so on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Hey, nice one, brother. Cheers.